that time of the year where universities are starting to give out interview offers, so it's probably best to start preparing now. So here are my 5 top tips to help you make the most of your MMI interview. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, my name is Hassan. I'm a 3rd year medical student at UCL. Before we go any further, I've linked timestamps in the description below, so please feel free to check them out and skip ahead to the sections that interest you. So without further ado, let's begin. My first tip would be to practice timing. Each station in an MMI interview is approximately 5 to 8 minutes, so make sure you're conscious of the time going by. But obviously this time range differs per university, so I'd recommend checking the interview offer that you've been given to find out the specifics, the amount of stations, maybe 5 stations, it could be 8, it could be more or less depending on the university, and I'd recommend checking the specific timing. Not only that, I'd keep another eye out for any more information they may give. For example, Sheffield, they told us a few of the stations, so we could kind of prepare for them in advance, but the rest of them was still a surprise. It's always worth a check. So continuing on, there's usually a buzzer 1 minute before the end of the interview. Again, this varies per university and they'll explain it to you whilst you're there, but this helps you to kind of keep track of time, and if you're in the middle of explaining something, it gives you time to sort of wrap up your argument and to come to a conclusion. As well as this, if you're speaking to a patient, it gives you a chance to conclude the conversation and say goodbye in a more casual manner rather than abruptly at the final second. So my second tip would be to treat each station as a fresh start. So one benefit of MMI interviews is there's a fresh interviewer at each station. So if you feel like you may have messed up one station, it's fine because you have a fresh start and you have another chance to sort of redeem yourself. In the grand scheme of things, if you messed up one station but the other 7 were perfect, then you still have a pretty good chance. So don't give up hope, and if you feel like you messed up a station, just try to let that thought go and try to put your sole focus on your next station. My third tip would be to be able to think creatively and try to improvise on the spot. So they may ask you questions that are completely unrelated to medicine, but questions that try to gauge how you think and what your thought process is when you're faced by something you may not know. So for example, a question they may give you is how many people are there in London? And a follow-up question could be how many of them do you think own a toothbrush? Questions like these have nothing to do with medicine, but the important thing is you explain your thought process at each step of the way and how you got to your final answer. It doesn't matter whether you're right or whether you're wrong, as long as you sort of made an educated guess and you explain to them why you thought that way. For example, in one of my interviews at one of the stations, we had to play some sort of guessing game. I can't give any specifics, but it was all about asking the right questions and trying to think logically to get to the final solution. So stations like these, it's very important to think out loud and explain your thought process as you're going along. My fourth tip would be communication. I can't emphasize this enough. Communication is at the forefront of any interview that you do. So role plays are very common in MMI interviews where you have to speak to a patient, whether it's explaining a concept to them or whether it's having a chat with a real patient about their condition and what affects them. So in situations like these, it's important you speak in simple, concise terms and not use any medical jargon. If it's a conversation, ask open questions and make sure you're actively listening to the patient, as they may drop hints on certain things they want you to follow up later on in the interview. For example, if they mention that they play a lot of sports, it may be worth asking that since being diagnosed with your condition, has this affected your sports in any way? Now this can lead to further exploration and further questions about this. So if their condition did affect their playing of sports, then you could explore this further and maybe ask them like what they do to cope with that and how they feel it affects them, and do they feel they have support in place and other alternatives. Fifth and final point, and arguably the most important, is to relax. You've made it this far and now you're on equal playing ground with all other applicants, and the medical school has invited you to interview because they think you're a good candidate and they want you to come to their university. So when in interview, make sure to remember to smile, like I always forget, and remember the interviewers are there because they want you to come to the medical school. They're not trying to trip you up or throw any trick questions your way. Your chances of getting into the medical school at this point are a lot higher than they were before. So before, the offers to applicants ratio could have been anywhere from 1 in 10 people, whereas now the offer to interviewees ratio may only be 1 in 2 or 1 in 3. so you have a much higher chance of getting in. So now is your chance to shine and to kind of show them why you should be accepted to medical school and why you'd make a good candidate. So if you enjoyed this video, then make sure to check out my other videos on my journey to medical school and why you should intercalate, and I'll see you guys in the next one.